The Big I thanks our political panel sponsors, Travelers, American Insurance Association, and Nationwide Insurance. And now, here they are. First, moderator, Big I President and CEO, Bob Rusbuldt. Joining Bob will be political analyst Bob Beckel and political analyst Tucker Carlson.
Oh, yeah.
Bob, how are you, big guy? Tucker, good to see you, buddy.
Oh, yeah. Well, here we are, and may the best man win, and we know it will be Tucker. And I'm totally objective, Bob, as he knows.
Yeah, sure. It's nice to see so many liberals in one room.
I do want to, before we start, thank our sponsors again, the American Insurance Association, Leanne Pusey, Nationwide, and Travelers. Thank you so much for sponsoring this panel this morning. We're going to start out right out of the box. We could psychoanalyze all of the candidates, and we could spend weeks and weeks on Donald Trump alone. But this is one of the most bizarre elections I've ever seen, Tucker. Where is all of this going?
We're in a populist moment. It is bizarre. I spent the last 3 months on the road with the candidates. By the way, thank you for having us. I haven't been in a room with this many normal people, and I don't know, I can't since Christmas, so it's really nice.
Question is, do they think the same thing about you?
No, they don't. They don't. That's okay. I'm used to being regarded as a freak. No, I actually think it's more predictable than we are giving it credit for being. I mean, the truth is, the two major parties have kind of ignored their voters. America has changed enormously in the last 25 years. The two parties have not. And so at some point, there was going to be a crisis, and that's what we're looking at now. The bottom line is the two insurgent candidacies, Trump and Bernie, are both running against really primarily their own party structures. This is an attack on the people in charge of our political system, and they're attacking on behalf of a really large group of people who feel like they're left out of the fruits of globalization, basically what we used to call the middle class or the working class. And I don't think either party has offered much to them in the last 25 years, and particularly in the last 10 years. And so where this is going, I mean, I think it's likely that Hillary Clinton's going to be the nominee. I think it's probable that Donald Trump will be the nominee. I'm not endorsing either one of those outcomes, one less than the other. But I think that's likely to happen. But the broader answer to that question is you're going to see a reordering of the priorities of the parties. The Democratic Party has moved dramatically left. That's been obscured by the Trump phenomenon, which has consumed all the oxygen, this massive orange phenomenon that's kind of blinded us to everything else that's going on. But the Democratic Party is totally different from the party that Bill Clinton ran 16 years ago. And the Republican Party, I think, is going to, whether Trump wins or not, is going to have to respond to some of the concerns he has raised and become more focused on the actual worries of the middle class. So I think everything's going to be different no matter what happens.
Bob, you've worked in every campaign, I think, since Woodrow Wilson.
No, it's Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And is there a fundamental realignment?
Good damn thing your check cleared, brother. It's all.
Is there a fundamental realignment of the parties taking place, or is this sort of an anomaly that people are upset with the establishment? Are the parties being realigned permanently?
Well, first of all, before we say that, I also want to thank the sponsor. It took me 30 years of the campaign circuit to realize you guys don't pay the bills. You get a couple of your schmucks in the audience to do it. I used to do that with fundraising all the time. First of all, Tucker, I wanted to say to you, on behalf of myself and my party, how terrible we feel about what's happened to the Republican Party this year. And we grieve for you, and you will pick up the broken piece of your life and carry on. Maybe. The thing that we got to keep in mind here is you got to look at the history of these things. This is nothing new. I mean, populism goes back to William Jennings Bryan. And as lately as, I mean, probably the most analogous situation was George Wallace, where Wallace took on the same kind of constituency that Trump has appealed to. Wallace did, anti-government and people who were out of work. And so it's not new. Ross Perot, you're going down the list of them. You see it about every 20 years, you see a cycle of populism come through. The question is who's going to ride the wave. And Trump was there. Two things to attribute to. One was the mood in the country, and secondly, a terribly weak field. And a lot of whom were, quote, establishment. I don't know who the establishment really is. I keep hearing that, everybody, but I don't know. It used to be there was an establishment. It was great. You go in the back room, you pay somebody money, and you get what you need. You know, that was a good way of doing politics. Now they keep talking about the establishment. Ranch, what his name is, Priebus is establishment. This guy can control things. He's a nice guy, but come on. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz said there was somebody you want in the back of working these things out. So it really is not. The party structure is simply a line to run on. And the reason I've never supported a Republican in my life, not once. When I was 13, my father took me to a voting machine, and he said, "Son, you see that Democratic lever?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You pull that, all good things are going to happen to you. Women, jobs, money." And I said, "What happens if I pull the Republican lever?" He said, "You're going to die." Every time I've gotten near a Republican, my hand goes like this. But no, I think it's the other analogy about the parties is, and Tucker made a good point about Bill Clinton. It took the McGovern era, the split for the Democrats over the Vietnam War, and moving way left. Now they were much far left than the party is now. But the party now is dependent very much like the Republicans are on Wall Street money, which is irony. But so it took the Democratic Party to Clinton to get the sort of middle line and get out of being a leftist party. I just don't think to the Republicans, it's going to be decades before they recover from this. And as I say, I feel terribly bad about it. I've known Donald Trump for years. We don't like each other, but he is what he is, and he's smart. He's got a great-looking daughter.
Tucker, Donald Trump's claim that the RNC has basically rigged the process.
Right.
That the process is not fair, that it favors, as Bob said, whatever the establishment is, it's rigged to favor them. Is the process rigged, or is Trump just trying to divide, the establishment from the angry white man?
Well, both. I mean, of course the process is rigged. It's a party process. It's not a federal process. It's designed by the parties to install someone they approve of, whose views align with those of the party, and who has the best shot of winning whatever election it is. So yeah, by definition, it's rigged. But it's rigged in a fairly transparent way. You sort of know what the rules are. And Trump, who has bragged about using bankruptcy laws and all sorts of unpopular mechanisms in the business world in order to enrich himself, it's legal, I did it, that's his excuse, didn't approach the nominating process the same way. And all of a sudden, he's shocked that there are no actual votes cast in Colorado. So obviously, that's disingenuous. On the other hand, it's insane to think that the party can continue to nominate people the way it did in the 1856 election. And you're hearing Republicans say that. Well, we have a long history of awarding the nomination to the person who got fewer votes. Yeah, that's true. Everything is different now. Here's specifically what's different: people's expectations about democracy, because we have the internet. And if there's one message of the internet, it's my voice counts. I'm a special snowflake. I matter. I mean, I'm serious. You can email the head of your company. You can tweet famous people and they read it. So what's the message to you? I matter. So you're going to tell a population of 320 million people trained for 20 years to believe, especially young people, that their opinion is deeply significant, that all of a sudden it's not? You risk social turmoil if you do that. So the truth is, even though Trump is, of course, false on this question, and the Republican Party, which hates him, literally hates him, Idi Amin would get a warmer welcome at the RNC headquarters than Donald Trump would. They're right on the merits, technically, but they are wrong in practical terms. It is not going to be possible to give the nomination to a guy with fewer votes. I just don't think that's going to happen. And by the way, I understand why they're upset about that. I understand why they're denying reality. But if you do that, you are saying to people your vote doesn't matter. And the truth is, there's a lot at stake here, much more than the actual election in November. Here's what's at stake: social stability. We have a bargain with the population in America. It's why it's been a stable country for 250 years. We say to them, you may not like what's happening here, but don't burn anything down, because in the next cycle, you can vote and change it. And if you say to them, just kidding, you thought it was an oligarchy, and guess what? I'm pulling off the mask, you're right. You're not in control at all. You have no role in this process. People who you've never heard of are actually making the big decisions. You risk a lot of volatility. That's my view.
But Tucker, in 10 Republican conventions, the person going in with the most delegates did 7 or 8 of those times they did not get the nomination.
That's true.
Like Dwight Eisenhower, Taft had more delegates.
For sure.
And so, what makes this year so much different?
I don't know, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat. The fact that American society is completely different from the American society that produced those outcomes. That was a time when people respected institutions. What institutions are respected now? The military, that's it. So, I mean, again, I'm not, by the way, I'm not sort of saying this is what I want. I'm just trying to provide the clearest possible read of America in this moment that I can.
The other thing, let me just comment on this about these whiners about the rules. First of all, there's no such thing as rules in these parties. They get created, every convention runs by their own rules. I mean, I've changed rules.
I know you have.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
You live by your own rules.
I thought it was for the good of the country. But you know, for Donald Trump to sit back and say how these were stolen from him, it was very clear what the procedure was. This has been going on for a lot of years. Every state, it's not just a national convention, there's 50 states and territories that have a system set up. And if he had paid any attention to it, the way that Cruz did, and now he's trying to play catch up. And he's playing catch up with one of my best friends, Paul Manafort. But Paul was the first guy to use the word Gestapo the other day. Yeah. Now that's a little subtle, you think? And I also have a theory, you know, about Alan Stone or Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
I think that was all a scam. I think Trump let him go so he could go out and do all the nasty work, and now he's coming back in. But and I like him. I'm a few guys who do like him. But it's going to take the Republican Party a long time to recover for this because they've joined with the Democratic Party, and the Democrats become party business pretty much. I know you all don't think so because of Barack Obama. You say Barack Obama, it doesn't matter what it is. You guys all can't stand him. You know, I mean, I don't know why you don't like Obamacare. It's so clear and succinct. Hey, listen, I have to spend every day defending it on him on television. It's like being the only fire hydrant at the Westminster Dog Show. Most days. But I think there's one thing people are not paying attention to here, that Obama has slowly but surely creeped up. You know, he was so unfavorable for so long. Now he's consistently more popular than unpopular. That hasn't happened in a while.
Well, it took Hillary and Trump to make him popular again.
Well, you know, would you invite him to your party? I mean, I don't know Hillary. She's nice. I've known Trump a long time. He's nice. But they would be nicer someplace else.
Bob, let me ask you. I know you feel the burn when you're chafing. Yeah. But who won the Democratic debate last night?
Probably the guy who got paid overtime to clean it up. I mean, I don't. Tad Devine, who's his strategist, worked for me for years and gave me credit for all this. I said, don't say that too often to many people. I did Sanders' first race for mayor of Burlington when he was a socialist then. And I said, you know, Bernie, this is probably just a thought, but the word socialist at the height of the Cold War is not necessarily a good idea. I'm going to do it. So he did, and he won. That was the mistake. He won. But and so he's really not a Democrat that says, you know, Carville said this the other day. He's right. You know, the guy's only been a Democrat for a year, but what does that mean? I mean, Tucker made a point about these. What are Republicans and Democrats for? They're to bring money in. I mean, you're one of the biggest money guys in Washington. You're a bag man. Do you know this about that? He can go anywhere he wants because.
Okay, so Tucker.
You can't take the heat, can you? That's right. No, that's fine. You do it well. Legally, most of the time, I understand.
Great. I hope
so
nobody.
Glad I came this morning. I can't stand it.
All right. Seriously though, Tucker. He's talking about a socialist running for. I mean, Karl Marx is alive, obviously. This is a guy who went on his honeymoon to the old Soviet Union.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. The 1930s have been resurrected in Bernie Sanders. I mean,
open your mind, Bob. You didn't hear the president the other day in Argentina? You have capitalism, you have socialism, and we're just going to have to decide which is more effective, because we didn't have a 70-year longitudinal experiment in the Soviet Union. You know, anybody who's seen a satellite picture of the Korean Peninsula, where the top half is dark and the bottom half is light, can answer the question. And yet, this is a product of a couple things. It's a product of the fact that our educational system doesn't teach the Cold War. The average person under 30 has no idea what happened and what the obvious lessons are from it. And the second point is that for the person under 30, the signature disaster in his lifetime was the 2008 financial collapse. And what's the message from that? Capitalism, in fact, doesn't work. And by the way, where are the market people, and I'm emphatically one of them, making the counter case? The capitalism actually is, and we know this. This is not a matter of conjecture.
They're not in jail where they should be.
That's Bernie's line, by the way. You laugh. Go to a Bernie rally. I'm sure few of you, if any, have actually been to a Bernie rally. Go.
7 million people lose their houses.
It's so interesting that, one, he can make economic claims that are provably false, and everyone sort of nods in bovine agreement. But two, what's more interesting, and you guessed that, but by the way, it's not just Starbucks baristas and guys with man buns and angry people with face piercings. You know what I mean? It's not just the marijuana caucus at these things. There are a lot of actually middle-aged working people there. Why is that? This is what people are missing about Bernie. Unlike the rest of the Democratic Party, which is completely controlled by the money people in Washington and as a result has the same set of elite concerns, Bernie's actually making a pitch to the middle class. He actually is. He's saying, here's what Bernie gets up and he says, look, how many of you have seen your premiums go up under Obamacare? And half the room raises their hands. It could be a Fox News segment. I'm serious. I've seen it. Mm-hmm. Well, he is talking about issues that people care about. What is the National Democratic Party talking about? Transgendered bathrooms and global warming. No, I'm not joking. Those really are the concerns. And by the way, those may be real concerns. I'm not mocking them. I'm merely saying to a person making 40 grand a year, those issues offer him nothing. Yeah, Bill Clinton got elected in 92 running on crime and jobs. Both of them were real concerns. Say what you want about Bill Clinton, but ordinary people said, you know what, it's too dangerous to go to the grocery store and I don't make enough money. I'm going to vote for you.
You should lay off that transgender thing. I think it's a...
No, I'm not attacking the transgender thing. I'm just saying it's the kind of thing that only rich people care about.
No, you're right. I've been to both Trump rallies, which is one of the more frightening experiences of my life, and I mean, I haven't seen some of these boys since I was a drunk. I mean, in fact, I saw some friends of mine. They all just gotten out of prison, but Bernie's people. I mean, if you take the young people out of the Trump rallies and you take the young people out of Senate, you got people there who, what did they run on? They ran against trade, both of them, and for people who are out of work, that $30,000 or $40,000 a year, which used to be middle class America, is poverty America.
Exactly.
You know, and that's one of the reasons there's this divide with the 1%. Is some serious stuff going on here. But Bernie and Trump, they're meeting someplace on the backside. Now it's Pluto. It's not the United States, but it's not going to work. But and neither party's going to nominate either one of them. I've got a theory about the Democrats. I mean. Let's say Hillary Clinton did get indicted on the email scandal, which
Please.
No, don't wish for things like that. Hey, you can't bother me anyway. I manage bond deals with the largest lawsuit issue in American politics, and you're still paying me to be here.
If we haven't sent a check yet.
Well, son, that answers that question. No, I think that the parties don't really have an identity. I mean, you know, they're both draw money out of Wall Street. They're both, I mean, look at what's going on. They can't get a nominee here. Why didn't the Republicans, why do they have to step into this all the time? Let Garland have a vote, beat him, done, fine, you've done it. But what's more important about this, something I've been involved in politics all my life, the demographics of this country are changing so dramatically. Do you know that for the first time, whites will make up less than 70% of the voting population? And it was 3 cycles ago, they were 80%. Hispanics will take up a larger and larger group, and so will blacks. And you've got, it's changed so much. The Republicans will never elect a president of the United States if they keep driving Hispanics the way they do. I mean, I saw Trump down at the border, and I said, Don, are you really serious about the Mexicans paying for this wall? I said, hell, first of all, they don't want the wall because you can't get drugs through it when it's there. But and I said, he said, we're going to build a 12-foot wall. I said, I'm going to be the first guy to invest in 13-foot ladders. But there are people who believe that their kids are getting, polluted by this stuff, and the terrorists coming across the border, and that their jobs are being lost. And nobody talks about the worldwide economy. I mean, the only people I know who are making a lot of money are people who insure people.
Well, Tucker, your last comments, it felt like you were feeling the burn a little bit.
Not at all.
No, but I totally get it because
I think it's offensive that he's running for president.
I've talked to a lot of young people, and the reason they like Bernie is that they believe he's telling the truth.
Exactly.
They believe he believes what he's saying, whereas Hillary doesn't believe what she's saying. But I want to switch gears.
Totally true.
I want to switch gears. We're going to talk about the Republican nominee, John Kasich.
Yes.
Okay. Remember, you haven't gotten your check yet. So be kind. Is there, seriously though, is there any chance in an open convention that Governor Kasich could actually get the nomination?
Yes, I mean, there is a chance, and I think Kasich is a serious person, and he's probably the most impressive Republican governor. The problem is that you need a legitimate candidate. And I'm not flacking for Trump for the 5th time. I'm gravely concerned about Donald Trump's ability.
He doth protest too much.
He does he?
No, I would admit, I don't care. I can say whatever I want, and I would admit it. I just think you need to have a nominee who can say, I'm here because a ton of people voted for me. And when you win the Vermont caucus in your home state, that doesn't convey the legitimacy required to be the nominee. And by the way, you'd have to leapfrog a guy with an actual claim, and that's Ted Cruz. And the tragedy of Ted Cruz is something we never talk about on TV, and here's why. Because nobody can really explain what the problem is. I have a rule I've got 4 kids, and my rule is you can say whatever you want about anybody, but you have to explain why you think it. You can't just throw out attacks on people. And the problem with Cruz is nobody can really explain why he's so unpopular. People just don't like him. Cruz would be the nominee by now if it weren't for his personality.
You don't think he's too far right for?
He's not too far right for a Republican primary.
Oh, for a Republican primary, yeah.
But by the way,
but Hitler would do well on that. I mean,
no, but I'm just saying. Look. The problem with Ted Cruz, he's the smartest person running. He's clearly the most agile verbally. He's an unbelievable debater. He's consistently conservative. He's actually not that right-wing. He's pretty flexible in ways that matter, I think. He's a full-on impressive guy. He's a nice family. And yet people don't like him. And I said to a friend of mine the other day, what is that about? And he offered this analogy, which is a little bit weird, but I think it does explain it. He said, have you ever met a woman who's not maybe like conventionally beautiful, not going to be on the cover of Vogue or something, but there's something so appealing about her that you find her irresistible? And you can't quite explain what it is. I said, yeah. He said, Ted Cruz is the opposite. And that gets as close as I can get to what it is. There's some ultrasonic vibe you get. It's not that he's the most dishonest politician. He's certainly not. Is he the phoniest? Are you joking? No, not even close. But there's something about him that makes others not like him. And I'm dead serious, by the way. I never say this on TV because I can't explain it and it sounds weird. But I know that it's true. I've been around him a lot. And I think the bottom line is, how could you nominate Kasich when you have Ted Cruz? And by the way, do you think Cruz and Trump are going to put up with that? They control 80% of the delegates.
By the way, John Kasich is very upset and disappointed because he doesn't have a nickname, Lion Ted.
I know.
Little Marco. Trump hasn't given him a nickname yet, so he hasn't arrived actually on stage.
Well, Cruz got, with all due respect, I mean, first of all, he looks like he's off the Starship Enterprise. That's one of the things. Some people are, and he talks that way like that too. He and Spock could probably communicate. Now, Tucker, you're exactly the opposite. Everybody likes you, but your positions are terrible. In Cruz's case, he really does have. Not only did he upset Congress by putting the federal government out of work, and it wasn't that. It was the way he did it with his snake and cheese, or whatever that thing is. What was the name of that thing he talked about? The cartoon thing.
Do you have any clue what he's talking about?
No, I really don't. Sometimes he breaks into Hungarian, and I'm like, what?
I'm looking at you two guys, and I'm saying to myself, no wonder. But Cruz is not. He has not developed a relationship with people that matters. People stand up and can defend him. Nobody does that. And in the case of Donald Trump, for good reason, but one of the reasons Christie has gotten himself in so much trouble is he endorsed Trump. I'd be very curious to see who would take the nomination with Donald Trump. Because if you do that, you are forever associated with Trump. It's what happened when Barry Goldwater got the nomination. Nobody would take it because they didn't want to be Barry Goldwater. So he got the mad bomber, Curtis LeMay. I think that's what's going to happen to Trump. He's going to turn around and everybody's going to say, no. And he's going to end up with some congressman from...
Bob, I mean, you and Hillary are doing the dance of joy because, I mean, your greatest fear would be Governor Kasich. Every poll.
Oh, absolutely.
Every single poll. He beats Hillary in Pennsylvania by 16 points today.
You're telling me, he's one of my favorite people, by the way. He's just, I told you before, he was on my back operation. He was the first guy to call me. He's a genuinely good guy. But this party is way away from where John Kasich is. John believes you could actually work with Democrats and do some things. Not the Republican Party of today. I mean, you go to one of those Donald Trump rallies, you understand. I mean, and Bernie's is, some of these people are
Well,
bringing
wait a sec. I mean, let's just, look, first of all, the categories are totally different. Donald Trump is not a right-winger. He's not a partisan Republican. He's not even a Republican. So the idea, I mean, the whole point of Trump is that he's not actually doctrinaire. Of course he'll work with Democrats. He was one like 20 minutes ago.
No, he's not.
He doesn't have, no, I'm serious. He is a populist. He is making the case that the U.S. government shouldn't make decisions except when they benefit the population of the United States. I mean, I think Trump is totally reckless. I think he's utterly ignorant. And I think there are a lot of problems. But his message is a winning message.
No, that's
yes,
winning.
it
You think
is.
it's a winning
and
message?
it's not a message of racism, by the way. It's a message about economic populism. Now, I'm actually not an economic populist, but I understand the appeal. People look at Trump and they're like, oh, you know, the population supports him. I mean, he's now close to 50% in the Fox News poll yesterday. I mean, the ceiling we keep talking about is false. It's a drop ceiling, and he's pierced it. Why is that? It's not because he's a great campaigner. He's a terrible campaigner. He doesn't have a campaign. His daughter's his only advisor. Like 8 people work for him. He spent less in the campaign than you spent on spring break last year. There's no campaign. He clearly is a flake, and he's self-sabotaging and saying these insane things and tweeting out pictures late night. It's nuts. But he's succeeding anyway because his message is resonant.
But with 67% disapproval rating.
But that's actually not true. Look at the numbers yesterday. Yeah, people disapprove of Trump. I mean, who couldn't disapprove of Trump? Okay? He's an animal. He's a barbarian. He's the bear and the revenant. He'll eat you. You know what I mean? He's not a presidential person, and he's also a sadist.
You're going to rue the day you said
look at what he did to his opponents. It's not enough for Trump to win. He has to hurt you. Jeb Bush, he beat Bush months before Bush got out. But he had to keep going, humiliating him, emasculating him. He'll never get a job again. His wife will never sleep with him again. His kids will change their last names. I mean, there's a cruelty to it that's very unappealing. So
he's a bully. I mean, he's a bully.
He's a bully. I totally agree.
A loudmouth bully. He's inherited his wealth from his father, and his great-grandfather ran a whorehouse out in Seattle. I mean, nobody says anything about that. But when
the message works.
When you get in front of that part of it, I think is probably not a bad thing. But when you can't explain, as a candidate for president of the United States to a editorial board, what the triad is, he doesn't know. Now, I mean, that just happens to be the thing.
It's the Chinese mafia.
No, really. I mean, he just doesn't get any of this stuff. But I think
cares,
Tucker's right.
Bob? How many people in this room know what the triad is? 0, probably.
I bet you a lot of them do.
But smart audience.
No, I don't know what it is. I've been here 31 years. I mean, who cares?
You know what the triad is.
Okay, but the point is, the average person in this country feels like the system is so complicated, you're not exactly sure how it works, but you do know that if you don't have a high school education, your wages haven't moved in a meaningful way since the year I was born, 1969, 46 years ago. And nobody seems to care. So if you get a guy, flawed though he is, who says, you know what, no one else is running for the middle class, I think I will. And if Marco Rubio had taken Trump's message, Marco Rubio is the most talented, appealing politician I think I've ever seen in my life. If he had taken Trump's message, taken the crazy out of it, moderated it a little bit, taken the dumb, hateful statements out, and just made a pretty straightforward pitch to the middle claess, he would have been the nominee 3 months ago. It's about the message.
But, Trump is the only guy that can sit up there and beat up on billionaires. There's a billionaire who does the same thing the billionaires he beats up on the billionaires about doing. He offshores money. He brings in illegal people to build his buildings, most of which fall down. And Trump is just not. He's not a guy with any depth. And when you know about what the triad is, it happens to be nuclear weapons. I mean, I'd let Trump have anything else. I don't care. Let him have HHS or let him try to get a battle somebody sink. But when you give him the nuclear weapon...
Really? Because it's more scary than Hillary?
He will never start...
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I mean, let's be serious. Trump is making an anti-war argument. This is like everyone's so caught up in
until somebody pisses him off, and then he's going to say, let's go.
No. Trump is the most anti-war candidate running. The reason is he owns property every place in the world. He is not going to launch a strike on the Trump Towers in Moscow. It will not happen.
Exactly.
The American people take this vote for president too seriously. It's not going to happen. I mean, it'd be nice to talk about. We've got a lot of time. It's not going to happen with Bernie. It's probably going to be up to being Cruz versus Hillary Clinton. Now, that's a very tasteful sandwich to think about. But I cannot imagine. That Hillary Clinton will absolutely crush Donald Trump. I'll bet 1,000 to 1, and I'm a gambler. That's a lot.
Trump. You'll bet 1,000 to 1.
If she doesn't get indicted, and anybody in their right mind is not going to indict her after June. I mean, this FBI guy.
How many want to take a piece of that action? Randy
happy
Lanois,
to do
I know,
it.
will
Bring
take
along,
that.
bring along. And anyway, the best thing that could happen to us, Frank, if she got indicted, you know who the nominee is going to be? Joe Biden. That's who's going to be the nominee.
No, it'll be Hillary.
No,
Indictment won't
if
slow
she
her
got
down.
indicted.
No, I don't think it. Mayor Curley. The party is so vested in Hillary Clinton at this point. They've gone too far. Hillary Clinton is the only option, and they will stick with her no matter. She's not going to be indicted because the Justice Department will not do that.
That's what I mean.
But I think
Yeah.
the FBI might recommend it, and I think the FBI director might resign if the Attorney General doesn't take him up on that recommendation. You could have a momentary crisis. But the Democrats will hang tough with Hillary because they have no option. It's not a party about ideas. It's a party about acquiring and using power. And she is the clearest line they have.
Well, I'll tell you,
As much
if
as
that
I like
scenario,
you, Tucker, would you give me one idea the Republicans have had lately? Besides anti-Obama. I mean, that I understand.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the Republican Party, but I mean, the Republican race is all about ideas, actually. It is all about ideas. It's a contest between this insurgency, the Trump phenomenon, which is almost half the party right now, and everybody else. It's the Reaganites, basically. Mm-hmm. And that is about ideas. Now, you can be mad about it, or you can disagree with it, or like me, you're not exactly sure what you think of it. But it's not about personalities. It's not about just pandering to different groups. It's about the question: what does it mean to be a Republican? What should we do with the country?
Yeah,
what do we stand for? I mean, it actually is about ideas.
Tucker, don't you think that and it's very serious though, I mean, usually in the summer before a presidential election year, people are out putting organizations together and money together. Trump was a joy for other cable news people. He got that entire summer. He was dominating the news, and then when if he thought he wasn't dominating the news, he'd call somebody an ugly slander, and that he'd get back in the news again.
Over $1 billion in free media.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I mean, he really has changed the way this is done now, and I mean, a lot of people are going to tweet from here on, or tweet or whatever you're going. But he's done that. Think about it. Every time he wants to get himself on the offensive again, he sends out a tweet.
It's the amount of free media where Fox would cut to his speeches and run the whole speech from an airport hangar, and you got Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio or John Kasich that don't get any coverage. It really is unbelievable.
Okay, I worked there, so let me just weigh in with the reality
I heard that.
for 1 second.
Yeah.
And the 2 points. One, the idea that you shouldn't cover the Republican frontrunner because you disapprove of his politics makes you not a journalist, but an activist. And, you know, even at the cable news networks, we try to report the news as we find it. A plane crashes, you cover it. I don't know, you didn't want it to crash, but it did, so you're there. So Trump is the frontrunner, not because anyone at Fox wanted him to be, trust me, but because a lot of voters supported him. So at some point, you've got to cover that. B, Trump is available in a way that none of these other geniuses is. So I've been in a bunch of the debates, and after the debates, you have the camera line like this, and a lot of these guys just don't show up. So where's Marco Rubio? Because I'd love to put him on TV. Oh, he's tired. He's in his room, drinking water, whatever he's doing. Who's there? Trump. And Trump is going from camera to camera. He doesn't even ask who's running the camera. It could be Al Jazeera or Bob's cable service. Doesn't matter. Hi, I'm Donald Trump. Here's what I think. He'll talk to anybody, anytime. So whose fault is that? It's the other candidates. They're afraid to say what they think. They're surrounded by this little coterie of consultants who are saying, don't talk, we've got a managed strategy.
But he's the Al Capone of politics. I mean, people want to talk to him, he makes himself accessible, and he makes a lot of news. The problem is that what he's saying doesn't make any sense.
Okay, that may be true, but I could get him on a cell right now, and so could you, because he's always happy to talk. So maybe this is a lesson to the other candidates. It's not about your donors, it's about voters. Just pay attention to voters a little bit. Here's the takeaway. A guy as flawed, demonstrably, wildly flawed as Donald Trump, as self-destructive as Donald Trump, is still winning because he's kind of paying attention just a little bit to what voters want. I don't know, that's not hard.
But Tucker, that represents such a small percentage of the American public electorate.
No, it doesn't.
35% of the Republican primary voter?
It's not 30, look at the polls as of today. It's
no. I'm talking about if you take, he's winning in these states and he's dominating it. But he's winning with 35 and 38% of the Republican vote of a Republican turnout that's about 25 or 30%. So it's not as if this guy is a dominant vote getter in America.
Really? Because in our third biggest state, whose primary is Tuesday, he's going to get over 50% likely.
Yeah, but he's from here. And he built owns everybody's building.
He's like, Hillary's from New York, too. I mean, she grew up playing stickball in the streets of Brooklyn. You know that.
Yeah. Hillary, yeah, she's from New York.
It's one of her many fake home states.
Don't tell me to sit home and bake and do that stuff.
Okay, well, a couple things. One is we're going to go to the audience in a couple of minutes for questions and answers. I think you guys probably have a ton of questions for these guys, number one. Number two is let's assume, forget whether Hillary's indicted or not, but if she were and ultimately convicted, her vice presidential nominee is going to be wildly important. Who will Hillary pick as her vice presidential nominee?
Well, first of all, if she will not be...
Forget that part. Who's she going to pick as her nominee?
Who's she going to pick? I would not be surprised if she picked Sherrod Brown from Ohio. I mean, she's a tradition. God knows, a traditional politician, and I happen to find her personally. I think she's great. I think she's smart. And when Sanders went off about her not being qualified, I mean that was just, nobody bought that. I mean, she certainly was qualified. Now you may argue that what she did with her qualifications didn't work, but I think she needs to firm up the Midwest. And vice presidential candidates, you got to be a little careful about this. They've never altered an election. People go back and there's a recent study out that shows you that even Lyndon Johnson didn't carry the state of Texas for Kennedy, but it does begin to give you an opening to talk about the things you want to talk about if you're the top of the ticket. And Hillary needs a lot of that. She's not Bill. But then again, Bill's time is come and gone. I mean, I think Tucker's right. This is a time in American politics where we don't quite get it. The demographics are changing, and we know the delivery of the media is changing. And so much of this was dominated by guys like yourself who could raise a ton of money. I mean, what do the money guys tell you? I mean, I don't know that they seem to be very unsatisfied about a lot of things. But
a lot of names. Tim Kaine, the senator from Virginia's name's been floated. There's been some others, but I agree. I think she's got to look sort of Midwest from a geographical perspective.
Well, the Democrats have built in 240 electoral votes, and they've got to win one or the other, Florida and
right.
Ohio. My greatest nightmare was Rubio and your guy together on a ticket. That would be deadly.
Still could happen.
Huh?
Still could happen.
Never know.
Yeah. Who will Hillary pick as her nominee?
I think Sherrod Brown is by far the most likely, and here's why. I don't think it's Ohio, actually. I don't think regional differences matter anywhere near to the degree we imagine they do. That's a holdover from generations past. Everything is nationalized thanks to the internet. It's about ideology. And the great unwritten story of this election, again, is just how far left Hillary Clinton has moved. And I don't think, actually, I never thought she was Trotskyian addressed. I don't think she's a hardcore leftist. I think she's kind of a dopey Midwestern Methodist liberal, actually. That's what she's been, a Children's Defense Fund liberal. She's moved hard left on economics. She announced 2 weeks ago that Obamacare under her administration subsidies will be available to illegal aliens. That's $5,000 per person per year times 13 million. Because why? That's insane. And she's not even bothering to explain why she's for that. She was against driver's licenses for illegal aliens. Now she's for them. Last year, what percentage of driver's licenses in the state of California, our biggest state, were issued to people here illegally? 50%. That's a massive change. And Bernie's going to lose the election. He has won the argument at every turn. The Republicans see Trump and they're like, we're terrified of Trump. You don't like Trump. No one in this room, I'm sure, likes Trump. I'm worried about Trump. They're fighting against Trump. On the Democratic side, here this socialist shows up and they don't fight him at all. They move to where he is. Sherrod Brown is probably the most left-wing senator, and a sincere one, too. I'm not attacking Sherrod Brown. He's an old-fashioned 1930s leftist and pretty smart, like Bernie Sanders. Her transformation will be complete. And I agree with Bob, by the way. I don't think it matters a huge amount. You can really only hurt yourself with a VP pick, as McCain proved.
And the VP hurt himself, too, badly by agreeing to go on.
A couple things I want to cover before we go to the audience. Okay, so who would Donald Trump pick as his vice presidential running mate, in your opinion?
Well, his first choice, he said it to me on the air when he first got into this, late last spring, early last summer, was Oprah.
Yes.
No one remembers this. He said it. I mean, I'll never forget it.
Yep.
That is one of the reasons it took me a while to take his campaign seriously. No, I mean, he has said he's going to pick a politician. Because that will compensate for one of his weaknesses, knowing the process. I still have trouble believing that. I think it's much more likely to be someone from outside of politics. I don't know. I've always thought Ben Carson would be an obvious pick for him. I don't think it'll be Chris Christie because I don't think he trusts him. I think he likes him but doesn't trust him. Probably.
You can go home now.
For good reason.
When Trump said on stage to Christie, you can go home now.
No. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Let me say one thing, though. The way that Donald Trump loses, and just to be clear, all things being equal, Trump's going to be your nominee. okay? Everyone's pretending that's not the case. It's the case. Here's how that doesn't happen. If there is some coalition between the other candidates before the convention. There's no law that says you pick your VP at the convention or the day before the convention. I mean, Ted Cruz could announce now who he's running with. And if he were to run with Kasich or Rubio, they might actually combined have more votes and delegates than Trump. And that would be a legitimate ticket. You could take that to voters and say, more people voted for these two guys combined than for Donald Trump. And I think you could definitely beat Trump with that. I don't know if they can pull that off.
Yeah, the other thing is that neither Clinton nor Trump on a second ballot are in very good shape. I mean, you look at these things, and Trump's very upset because his kind of voters are not going to be delegates. It's a good thing, but if you look at these, they're all state convention, then state convention. The same hacks get picked on both sides. Yeah, they're bound on the first election. Although one thing people have forgotten here: super delegates, which is something that we put together to basically ensure that we control things. But
you're an honest man, Bob. I love it.
They are not bound on their first ballot, but what they've said to a candidate, they're not bound. And here's the other important thing: they also can abstain, but the majority remains the same. Same with the Republican Party; they can abstain. So you've got some super delegates. You got the 400 some members of the Republican National Committee, whatever you've got there. You've got a bunch of them, and they could all say no. And then it gets much more difficult to get to that number.
Let me switch gears for 1 second. The Senate races people are not talking about it very much. Crucial. Forget who the next president is, whether it's Hillary, Trump, or whoever. We have Senate races hanging by a thread. New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois. You go right down the line. These are seats held by Republicans in, at best, swing states. And the nominee makes a huge difference in these Senate races. What's going to happen in some of these Senate races?
Well, one of the things that's happened, the bad timing for the Republicans, every presidential election, one party or the other is exposed by a lot of voters. Remember that the Democrats had, I think, 23 or 4 of the seats were available in 2012. And the Republicans are just the opposite now. The Republicans had very few and safe seats. Now they've got a huge amount of seats, not to mention some open seats. But if you look at the statistics of voting patterns in this country, if the top of the ticket loses by 6% or more, it's virtually impossible if you're in a head-to-head race for the Senate to stay hooked be able to make yourself so anonymous from the head of the ticket. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I ran Walter Mondale's campaign, and we had to steal Minnesota. It was, but we couldn't get anybody to campaign with us near the end. Who do you think is going to go up on the stage with Donald Trump? Yeah. I mean, they're going to be on another side of town. They're going to have more relatives that die when Trump's in their town to go to a funeral, because they're simply not going to get associated with that. And Trump won't care. My own guess is he's one way or another.
Tucker, we have almost no vulnerable Republican member of Congress that's going to the Cleveland convention. They're in every day more announcements like Kelly Ayotte and Pat Toomey and Mark Kirk, and you go right down the line of these vulnerable senators. They said, we're not going to Cleveland, we're not going to the convention. So what happens in these Senate races? I mean,
Bob is right. I mean, it depends what happens at the top of the ticket. And of course, this looks like a disaster now for the Republicans. Of course it does. If there was ever a year when things could change completely in the next 3 months, it's this year. I mean, the key mistake even smart people make, especially here in Washington, is assuming that the future is a pure extrapolation from today. Current events will continue. Today will be more like, tomorrow will be like today, but more so. That's sometimes true. It's often as not true. Unforeseen events intercede and change everything. Or trends accelerate in ways you don't expect. So look, here's the bottom line. If the Republican Party needs to get around a message, it's always been a party about a message. Always. It is the party of ideas. Sometimes it's not clear what those ideas are, but Republicans are the people of the book. Like they're on the same side because they share the same ideology. If the Republican Party were to decide, you know what, the Democratic Party for 70 years was the party of working people. It no longer is. It's the party of the rich and the poor. I mean, and the numbers bear this out and prove it conclusively. We're going to take a flyer and we're going to try to represent people in the middle of the country. You could actually win. Now, it would take a lot. I don't think Trump is the favorite. I think if Trump were to go against Hillary, he'd have maybe a 30% shot of winning. Anybody else goes against Hillary, 0%, because the demographics have changed too much. Here's the one question you got to keep in mind. Is there anyone else in the Republican field who could convince people who didn't vote for Mitt Romney in 2012 to vote Republican this time? And the answer, of course, is no. Ted Cruz will not convince us. I mean, I'll vote for Ted Cruz. I agree with Ted Cruz. I'm a conservative. But not a single person who isn't already convinced is going to vote for Ted Cruz. Not one. And my wife won't vote for him even though she's conservative because she thinks he's creepy. So he will lose votes. No, I'm just being honest. If you repeat this, I will find you.
Just one
But right?
Tucker.
So the hope with Trump is that it's a reshuffling of the deck. Yeah, of course it's insane. Of course it's precedent breaking. Of course it's embarrassing as hell. But it might be enough to reshuffle the map to where the Republican could win. That's the only hope, okay? The country, different people live in this country. And
damn, that was a good try. I mean, I got to give
It's true.
Really. But,
It's
something you said before, but you can't possibly give anybody the nomination who doesn't win the most votes,
Yeah.
right? I was noticed that happened when George Bush won the presidency.
And look what happened.
Well,
look
that's exactly what
bitter
happened. They
8
stole
years
it
that
from-
was.
from
No, you
George.
make a fair point. I mean, look how bitter it was. A lot of people never believed that he was the legitimate president. And it's very hard to govern if people don't believe that. The only legitimacy in a democracy comes from votes. That's the only source. In an aristocracy, it comes from God. I'm in charge because God put me here. We don't believe that. I'm in charge because voters put me here. And if people don't accept that a person in charge was put there by actual voters, he can't govern. It's true.
We also got to keep in mind that
we're gonna
Hillary automatically loses 20 states to.
We're going to take a couple questions from the audience, from real people.
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Spencer Holden from Connecticut.
Just touch on that. Thanks for being here. It's great comments.
Thanks.
But touching on that, we spent a lot of time talking about why Donald has been successful and why Bernie has been successful. And we've heard all week, Senator Schumer yesterday explained why they're successful. But what I can't figure out is when we look back several months ago, and everybody was laughing about, the first day Trump announced, and we had the comment about the rapist, and then we had the John McCain comment, and literally everybody said this isn't going to last long. Jeb had all the best advisors in the world. He got smoked. How did we miss this? We all say now that we know this, what happened, but how did we actually not see it coming? Because from what I saw on every channel, everybody thought this was an impossibility, that we'd be in this position right now.
Well, not everybody. I mean, not everybody thought that. But the truth is, most journalists are kind of dumb. If they were smarter, they'd be in finance. I mean, you know what I mean? That's part of it. And I've spent my whole life in this. I grew up, my dad did it. I've been around it. This is the one thing I know a lot about is journalism, and there are a lot of unimpressive people in it. But it's also, talk about an airless room. Everybody in journalism has the same opinions. They're from exactly the same background. Exactly. I don't care what color they are. They all went to Middlebury. They all grew up upper middle class. And they have the same cultural assumptions. They don't know anybody who doesn't agree with them. And so they weren't able to see that actually not everyone shares our views. There's not one person in D.C., including me, who's not pro-immigration, because, of course, why would we be against it? We benefit from it. We don't send our kids to public school or use the emergency room for health care or take the bus or compete for jobs with people who are undercutting our wages. It doesn't happen here. The second recent immigrants become asbestos lobbyists, then you'll find my neighbors upset about mass immigration, okay? But as of this point, they're so out of touch, they don't get it. And they're also mesmerized by Trump because he's just like this explosion of crazy. So they can't, so you gotta flip the telescope around. Take your eyes off Trump, look at who's supporting him. And our explanation is, well, they're all dumb and they're all racist. They're just mouth breathers, they're so high on OxyContin, they don't know what they're doing. And that is, first of all, patronizing and offensive, actually, because they are Americans. But it's also stupid. You miss the phenomenon if you only look at the guy leading it. Look at the people supporting him. They have legitimate concerns, indeed legitimate grievances, and those grievances are unaddressed. So of course this is going to happen.
I think that's the better point. They left unaddressed. I mean, they didn't see this. I'm from Connecticut too, by the way. It's not Greenwich. I think that, the political establishment in this town, and this is what I will say about it, I mean, we know who they are. There's probably about 8 or 10,000, that's it. And they don't understand demographics. And anybody who's a Republican here, who looks at the votes and gets beaten 2 times in a row among Hispanics, 2-1, you cannot possibly win. And it's going to get worse. And you're not going to break into the black thing. The one guy that actually appealed some to black voters was Ron Paul. because what's the kid's name?
Who?
Paul.
Paul Ryan?
No.
Rand Paul?
Rand Paul.
Yeah, Rand Paul. Rand Paul went to Detroit and came up with some ideas, good ideas. But the Republican Party just doesn't want to seem to touch that. And you guys, 17% of the electorate is going to be Hispanic, and it's growing in leaps and bounds. And you call them wetbacks, and you build and I've listened to Republicans, and they should be perfect for Republicans. They're more God-fearing, they're more family-oriented. The most number of Medal of Honor winners in America by ethnicity are Hispanics. But for some reason, it's like you all get together, Republicans get together and figure out, what are we going to do to get them pissed off this time? What are we going to do? And they are. And they're simply not going to vote. George Bush was the last one who broke 40%, but George Bush understood Hispanics very well. And the rest of these guys don't. Who's that guy, that guy from Colorado, that complete loon that came up with the anti-Hispanic stuff?
Tom Tancredo.
Tancredo, God. But you can't do that. You can't just insult these people and expect that you can win a presidency.
Well, that's obviously true. If you tell people you hate them, this is a little bit of political theory for you, they don't like it. So I agree with that. But it doesn't mean, as a policy question, that every so-called Hispanic, everyone with a Hispanic last name in this country, is for illegal immigration, open borders, which is what we have in effect today, and mass low-skilled, low-wage immigration. Cesar Chavez, who in my home state, California, led the labor movement in the Central Valley for generations, was the most anti-illegal immigrant, Why? Because it shafts people at the lower end of the labor scale. And we lie about it.
The fact is that that's not true.
Actually, it is true, and here's how I know that.
Well, I don't know. Well, you find people from California who are making these beds this morning. I'll be
No, you're missing the point. We have this thing called supply and demand. I don't think it's a theory. I think it's been elevated to a law, I think. If you have a surfeit of something, an overabundance of something, does its value rise or fall? You guys are in business. It falls. And we have, at the lower end, not in our end, not in our world, not in your world, but at the lower end, an awful lot of cheap labor. What does that do to wages? It holds them down. And the left used to understand this. And the right maybe still does, but they're afraid they're going to alienate people. Why is that a bad message for Hispanic voters who are already here? You don't have to hate Hispanics to say too much low-wage labor.
You're exactly right, but you go out of your way to hate Hispanics. That's
we're going to take another question, and Jonathan gets Tucker some decaf coffee.
I'm spun up, man.
Jill Ahart Roth from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and formerly New Jersey.
I'm from everywhere. I'm like Hillary Clinton.
But way better, I can tell.
That was a nice shot.
My question is, well, thank you both for being here. It's been great. But my question is, Obama really rallied the younger generation as far as getting out the emails and the internet, engaging everyone through that. Obviously, Bernie Sanders and his free college is appealing to the younger generation. Let's just say the ticket really is a Trump-Clinton election. Do you see them rallying that younger generation like a Sanders or an Obama?
So smart. I mean, no. On either side, young people hate Trump because they think he's racist, and that's totally unacceptable for young people. Totally unacceptable. I actually don't think it's a fair criticism. I don't think he's insane. I don't think he's racist. But they think that, so that's what matters. He's not going to get the support of young people, and Hillary Clinton is regarded correctly as dishonest by young people. The spread among voters under 40, and particularly under 30, between Hillary and Bernie is it's North Korean. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. It's like he's literally won a bunch of different caucuses and some primaries by 90% among young people. One of the guys who runs their super PAC said to me, this is awful, but it's sort of funny. He goes, if Bernie really wanted to stop the Hillary campaign, he would outlaw the tennis balls that go under the front of walkers because none of our voters could get to the polls. This is from a Hillary guy. No, the spread is shocking. And I think probably, and again, I'm not flacking for the Republicans. They've got as big a problem. I think probably this will be resolved by young people doing what they normally do, which is staying home with Xbox and marijuana and not voting.
I just figured that tennis ball thing out. It took me although there's a lot of truth there, but I think it's fairly fair to say that Trump will not get young voters. The nuggets with young voters are 80s. Hillary may have a chance to bring him back if Trump's the nominee, just because they can say, I went there to vote against Trump. And she probably will have a much better opportunity to rally the Democratic base than Trump will the Republican base. And, or let me put this, not the base. I keep hearing that. I'm not sure what that means. But the Trump voters that can he pull out some voters that normally don't go to the Republicans in the fall? Yeah, sure. In some important states, in Michigan, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Indiana. But, and you know, the Republicans begin with a pretty nice cushion in the South that wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton if she were running against Goofy. But it's, by the way, I punched Goofy and got thrown out of Disney World one day. Nastiest little, but you're going to have if it's Clinton and Trump, you're going to have people who are running for president whose negatives are, you know, astronomical. I mean, nobody's ever had this before. So it may be a voter, but I don't think so. I think the anger is going to drive it both sides.
Who would have thought that a 74-year-old guy who's been in Congress for 25 years would be the anti-establishment darling of people under 35 years old? A guy that looks like the professor in Back to the Future, 2.4 billion gigawatts.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm the last middle-aged white guy who's a liberal American.
Right.
And I feel sometimes like it should be next to the dodo bird at the Smithsonian. But young people really do think with their hearts. And with their hearts, they do not like Trump. I mean, it's vicious. You go to college campuses and they've got signs all over about Trump, you know. In Hillary's case, they just don't show up. But in Trump's case, it's visceral. So that's a problem.
Next question is Dave Walker from Michigan.
Thank you, and thank you both for being here. My question is, really, when you look at the cast of characters that we've got running this year, and you look back, I think they're part of their attraction. I think both of you are right. It's not always, I think a lot of this is driven by anger, and that anger is the frustration of the gridlock that we have here in D.C. Mm-hmm. And love them or hate them, you know, Reagan and Tip O'Neill figured out a way to govern. Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich figured out a way to govern. Do we have any of these candidates that you think, in your opinion, will he be able to reach across, I don't care which aisle, and actually be able to govern? Because I think that's part of the frustration and the anger that's driving all the campaigns. You know,
I'll take a shot at this one first. I wrote a book with Cal Thomas called Common Ground, and we've been writing an article on USA Today for 10 years now, trying to deal with this divide, because it's not just that the parties have moved philosophically so far apart. I mean, they don't even sit down with each other. But what amazes me is they don't seem to get it, and when they do, this is when they'll change. That being able to cross the aisle and doing something is much better politics than being polarized. Much better. And I don't understand why they don't get it. Now, one of the reasons is that the voters don't punish them for it. And the tragedy is people don't vote. Every time I hear somebody complain, I ask them if they vote, and they say no, they don't. You know the total percentage of Republicans who pick the Senate candidates of the total Republican base? It's about 9%. Now, who's that? Who makes up that 9%? It's Tea Party people. It's going down the list. And on the Democratic side, it's weird people. But it is true that the lack of participation in a changing environment like this, and where you've got no big players anymore. You used to have some people with stature who could bring bipartisanship to the fore and understood it as an important thing to help the country move forward. It was good politics. They just don't buy it. And Cruz is the leader of that. Cruz refuses and will refuse to deal with any Democrat on anything. Okay. So, I don't see it with Hillary Clinton or with Cruz or with Trump. Does anybody see it changing? I mean, I don't. Unless they wipe out and the Democrats get in control. I mean, the best thing that can happen to you all is to have the Democrats in control. You can whine some more. And I know it's tough on you. I know you insurance people have a hard time.
Okay, Bob, that's enough.
No. By the way, you do have a really good staff of people here. You really do. Your operation here is excellent because they've actually convinced people you've got troubles. And of course, they fill you out their familiar Obamacare. They bring that out. Greatest single thing that ever happened to the American people.
They just don't know it yet.
No, you watch. It'll be a legacy.
You're absolutely right that anger is driving this, but where's that anger coming from? Where does anger always come from? Fear, of course.
Yeah, that's right.
People are terrified. Older people are terrified because the country they live in isn't the country they grew up in, and it's not a better country. And young people are every bit as terrified because they know, let's be totally honest, if you have kids, I've got 4, including 2 in college. 22-year-old kid coming out of college from a middle-class family knows in his soul that he's not going to live as well as his parents did. He just knows that. Now, I hope he's wrong, but as of right now, they feel that way. So somebody needs to speak to them in concrete terms about how actually maybe there is a chance they'll live as well as their parents did. And to older people that, yeah, the country has changed a lot, but it's not out of control. It's not getting terrible. Here's what the future is going to look like. You need concrete answers for those people. And if you don't provide them or even try, which America's ruling class hasn't done because it doesn't care, you wind up with buffoons and demagogues like Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. That's what's happened.
Yeah, but in fairness, there's been the Republicans and a lot of their communicators who've stirred this. And Barack Obama has become a perfect focal point for negative stuff that they throw into the fire.
Maybe, but I mean, so actually listen to what the president says. I'm not an Obama hater, but listen to what the president says. He gave an interview. Well, I don't look. What's his chief concern? If you ask the president, what are you most worried about? He will say climate change.
Yeah, so am I.
Okay, that is the most. First of all, the most abstract possible concern you could possibly have.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm serious.
Sure, people
It is
melting on the
totally,
streets.
look, we can prove that climate has changed. We cannot prove why, and we certainly can't even suggest what we could do about it. So if you're looking at your average, so this, again, is the kind of thing that gets my neighbors totally spun up. They're all excited about it. They get in their little Priuses with the Obama stickers on the back, and they drive to Whole Foods, and they feel virtuous because they're upset about climate change. But to one of my kids who's actually looking to get a decent job, or to somebody who lives in Youngstown, Ohio, and is working at Walmart and mad about it, or driving for Uber and mad about it, that offers literally nothing. That's a boutique concern of rich people. And you know that's true. And so I'm not saying it's not a real concern. It might be a real concern. But as a political matter, it moves not a single vote.
Okay. Last question over here. Last question.
Can I just throw one thing into this?
No.
Yes, I will. Yes, I will.
No.
Panable. All I was going to say is that baby boomers are going to give to their kids $7 trillion in inheritance. That's going to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Last question from the home of the next President of the United States, Ohio, Governor Kasich. Akron, Ohio, Janie.
Did you really ask that question?
Real quick, at this point in the race with Kasich choosing to hang in there, is that hurting, helping, or does it matter, the Republican cause?
Could you explain that again? You sound like a Republican. I can't understand. No, well, could you repeat? I don't know what the question was. Can you?
Does Kasich staying in the race help or hurt Republicans at this point in time?
You know, I don't think it helps, or, I mean, how many Kasich voters would vote for Trump? I'm just estimate right around 0 in that range. How many would vote for Cruz? Not many. They'd be voting for Cruz already, right? I mean, Cruz is the real option, and they're not voting for him. So what you're looking at is the divide within the larger Republican Party. You have the populist wing, you have the social conservative wing, and you have the institutional Reaganite wing. And each one of these candidates represents a side, and probably in proportion to their existence in the party. So I'm not, and I know everybody has constructed these theories. You know, the Trump people are mad at Kasich, I guess. The Cruz people hate Kasich because they're totally convinced Kasich's out of the race. They're going to get all his votes. I think it's a fantasy. I think it's just another sign of how deeply divided the party is. And the last thing I will say is, if you want to win an election, the first thing you have to figure out is what you're for. What you're for. You can win if you figure that out. That's why Hillary can't put this 74-year-old guy with ear hair away, because she's not for anything. Vote for me, I'm a woman, whatever. It's thin gruel, man. Yeah, Bernie Sanders is saying he knows exactly what he's for.
Yeah, but you know, it is true that the modern Republican Party, it's a stretch to use that word, but it's built itself on being anti-Obama. They're not pro anything. But you know, the fact is that you got to keep a couple things in mind. Kasich and Rubio, I think, control about 300 delegates between the two of them, maybe more because Rubio picks them more up. They cannot go to Cruz and say, we're going to cut a deal, give you our delegates. Those delegates are still bound to vote for him on the first ballot. Yep. So if they could get through the first ballot and get into the second ballot, then maybe it would make a difference. But it's the same thing. Democrats can't do that. Those are bound. You got to wait till the second ballot. And at the second ballot, you know, the last person who knew anything about that was me. And that, you know, I'm so old that you know, you just don't have anybody who understands that stuff unless you want to steal it. Which is why my friend Paul Manafort's a good choice.
Well, it didn't help. It didn't help Williams Jennings Bryan when you were advising him, but we'll see if it does this time.
You know, you're awfully picky, you know.
Yeah. Hey, Bob, this is the most important question. They want to know who's going to win the World Series this coming year.
The Nationals?
Oh, that's the right answer. Right answer. Tucker?
Duh, the Boston Red Sox. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, guys, one last thing. My 2 corgi dogs are looking for you at the Westminster Dog Show next year. just want to.
Did you hear that story? Did I tell you that story?
Well, you mentioned it briefly.
Yeah, there was the best of show. This was about 15 years ago. They you know, those people that run them around like this. The British corgi dog was being run by a 300-pound woman, and she goes running with the corgi, and she tripped, and she fell on the corgi and killed.
On that note,
I still keep that clip, man. It's great.
You are such a dark man, Bob. It's unbelievable.
That poor corgi. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. You've been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Bob.
Have a great time. Thank you.
The Big I thanks you for attending this year's legislative conference and asks you to join us again next year right here in Washington, D.C. Please have a safe trip home.